Hey there, I'm Zephyr. I showed up to a family reunion I paid for myself, expecting warm hugs and familiar laughter, but instead I found an empty room. No greetings, no smiles, just a waitress telling me the dinner happened yesterday. When I called my mom, she laughed, a sound that cut deeper than any words could. That was the night I realized this wasn't a simple mix-up, it was a pattern. They'd been using my name, my credit, my trust, all while expecting me to keep footing the bill. I used to think I was the dependable son, the one who held things together. Now I wonder, was I just the easiest one to take advantage of? Stick around to see what I uncovered next. I checked the message 3 times before stepping out of my car, the screen glowing with the confirmation I'd sent 2 weeks ago. Friday, 7 p.m., Blue Haven Eatery, Savannah. I wasn't early or late, I was right on time. The evening breeze carried that cool Georgia autumn bite, making me zip my jacket halfway up. I'd chosen a charcoal gray shirt and khakis, nothing flashy, just enough to show I'd made an effort. I even wore the watch my mom once said made me look dependable, its silver band feeling heavier than usual. Maybe I wanted to be taken seriously tonight, to be seen as more than the guy who always says yes. Blue Haven Eatery glowed with a warm, inviting light as I approached. Inside, smooth jazz filled the air, mingling with the clink of silverware from the main dining room where families shared plates and couples leaned close over candlelight. But the private room I'd reserved, the one I'd spent $1,820 to secure for my family, was dark. The door closed, the sign outside blank. A knot tightened in my stomach, but I brushed it off. Maybe they were running late. I stepped up to the hostess stand, my shoes clicking softly against the hardwood floor. The hostess, a young woman with a name tag reading Lila, barely looked up from her clipboard. "Hi," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "I'm here for the Calverton family dinner, private room under Zephyr Calverton." Lila scanned her notes. "That was yesterday," she said, her tone flat like she'd just told me the time. The words hit me like a slow-motion punch. "Yesterday?" My voice sharpened, a crack in the calm I'd been holding on to. She nodded, flipping a page. "Yeah, 16 guests, custom menu, a vegan entree for one. Thursday evening, they left before 9. The jazz faded into a dull hum. The dining room sounds a distant echo. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the message thread with my mom. There it was. "Mom, 2 weeks ago. Dinner, Blue Haven Eatery, Fry at 7 p.m. Can't wait to see everyone." I turned the screen toward Lila, my hands steady but my chest tight. "I booked it for tonight. I confirmed it with your manager." Lila offered a customer service smile, the kind that stays glued on even when someone's unraveling. "I believe your mother rescheduled it last week." "Last week?" The words tasted bitter, like biting into something sour. A pressure built behind my eyes, a tension pulsing in my teeth. I stepped back, my shoulder brushing the polished wood paneling, the faint scent of apple cinnamon in the air, a cruel mockery of the warmth I'd expected. I opened my messages, no missed calls, no new texts, just the silence of being forgotten on purpose. My thumb hovered over my mom's name, and I hit call. It rang twice before she picked up. "Oh, hey, sweetie." Her voice came through, syrupy and light, the kind you'd use to soothe a child. "Everything okay?" I kept my tone even, though it took everything not to let it crack. "Where is everyone?" A pause. I heard chatter in the background, the faint clink of glasses, a life I wasn't part of. Then came the laugh, small, guilty, too airy to be genuine. "Oh, sweetie, that was yesterday. We figured you weren't coming." The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, but she filled it quickly. "Don't worry, we brought you some leftovers. There's even cake, pecan praline." "Leftovers from the dinner I paid for?" My voice was low, each word deliberate. "I booked that room, Mom. I paid the deposit." "I know, darling, and it was beautiful. Everyone said it was the best reunion we've ever had." Her voice stayed sweet, but there was a dismissive edge that stung more than the words. I hung up before I could say something I'd regret, something that would unravel the thin thread I'd been walking for years. I slid into my car, hands on the steering wheel, staring at my reflection in the dark windshield, the streetlights casting shadows across my face. Something had ended, not with yelling, but with the quiet confirmation of a truth I'd been ignoring. I'd always been the one to remember birthdays, to cover costs when someone's card got declined, to make sure Grandpa had a ride to the doctor. I planned, I paid, I followed up, and when I wasn't there, the party still happened. And it just didn't have me in it. I thought back to the messages I'd sent earlier that week. "Still good for Friday? What's the final head count?" No replies, Not from Mom, not from Sigrid, not from anyone. They knew I'd be there. They just decided I shouldn't be. Then I remembered something Elton, my cousin, had said 2 weeks ago at a gas station on the edge of town. He'd been fidgeting with his keys, avoiding my eyes. "If you show up Friday, just keep it chill, okay?" I'd laughed, thinking he meant the usual family drama. Sigrid's meltdowns, Dad's passive-aggressive comments. But he meant this. He knew they'd moved the dinner. He knew I wasn't invited. He knew they'd play dumb if I showed up. Like I was the fool for expecting otherwise. They'd rehearsed for this. I could see it now. Them sitting around Mom and Dad's dining table, the one with the chipped glass vase of dried lavender, plotting in the family group chat I hadn't been part of for years. He won't cause a scene. He never does. He's too polite to explode. They were right. I didn't explode. But sitting in that parking lot, the streetlights flickering above, I felt something shift. Clarity, sharp and cold, like the first frost of the season. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd chosen to leave me out. I opened my banking app, the screen lighting up with a charge. Blue Haven Eatery, $1,820. 16 people, a custom menu, a wine upgrade, a vegan entree for Sigrid's new lifestyle. I opened my notes, titling a new document, Unpaid Debts, and listed the costs I'd covered for them over the years. Birthday gifts for Mom, $150. Vet bill for Sigrid's cat, $510. New tires for Dad's truck, $620. Rent for Elton, $400. The dinner, $1,820. I wasn't writing for revenge. I was writing to remember. Back at my apartment, I dropped my keys on the counter, the sound echoing in the quiet space. I lived in a small, one-bedroom place on the outskirts of Savannah, the walls a faded beige, the sofa a hand-me-down with a tear in the armrest. I changed into sweatpants, poured myself a cup of peppermint tea, and sat on the sofa with my journal. At the top of a fresh page, I wrote in block letters, not mistakes, decisions. This wasn't a mix-up, it was a choice, deliberate and calculated, and choices like that leave trails. I thought about my family, Mom with her syrupy voice that masked her indifference, Sigrid, who always got the benefit of the doubt, Dad, whose silence shielded everyone else's actions, and Elton, who knew but didn't tell me. They'd built a system where I was the one who gave, the one who fixed, the one they could leave behind. But as the city hummed outside my window, I realized this wasn't just about the dinner. This was about the version of myself I'd let them shape, the one who thought love meant saying yes, even when it hurt. I set the journal down, the words, not mistakes, decisions staring back at me like a challenge. I didn't know what I'd find if I kept digging, but I couldn't stop now. The trail was there, and I was going to follow it. Sitting in my quiet apartment, the taste of peppermint tea still lingering on my tongue, I couldn't shake the image of that dark, empty room at Blue Haven Eatery. The dinner I'd paid for, the one my family had attended without me, wasn't just a forgotten detail. It was a choice. And the more I thought about it, the clearer the pattern became. They'd counted on my silence, my willingness to let things slide, but that night, something in me shifted. I wasn't just hurt, I was awake, and I was done being the one they could erase. I replayed Elton's words from 2 weeks ago, the way he'd fidgeted with his keys at the gas station, his eyes darting away from mine. "If you show up Friday, just keep it chill, okay?" I'd laughed it off then, assuming he meant the usual family drama, Sigrid's theatrics or Dad's grumbling. But now, those words felt like a warning, a breadcrumb I'd ignored. Elton knew they'd moved the dinner. He knew I wasn't invited. He knew they'd play dumb if I showed up, banking on my politeness to keep the peace. They'd planned for my absence, probably in the family group chat I hadn't been part of for years, the one where they made decisions about me without me. The realization settled in my chest like a stone, heavy and unyielding. This wasn't a mistake, it was a rehearsal. I opened my laptop, the screen casting a pale glow across the dim room. The unpaid debts document I'd started earlier stared back at me, a stark list of the ways I'd been taken for granted. I scrolled through the entries: birthday gifts for Mom, $150, vet bill for Sigrid's cat, $510, new tires for Dad's truck, $620, rent for Elton, $400, the Blue Haven dinner, $1,820. Each number was a thread in the web they'd woven around me, a web I'd been too busy or too naive to notice. I added a note beneath the list. They counted on me to forget. But I wasn't forgetting anymore. I was tracing the threads, following them back to the source. My mind drifted to the family dynamics I'd always accepted as normal. I'd been the one to organize, to pay, to fix things when they broke, whether it was a flat tire or a missed bill. I'd driven Grandpa to the doctor when no one else had time, sent flowers for Mom's birthday when everyone else forgot, and covered Sigrid's vet bill when her cat got sick, even though she'd never paid me back. I thought that's what love looked like, being there, no matter what. But as I sat there, the city lights flickering outside my window, I saw it for what it was, a one-sided bargain. They took, I gave, and when I wasn't there to give, they found a way to take anyway. I thought about Dad's new truck tires, the ones I'd paid for last year after he'd called me in a panic, saying his card was declined. "You're a lifesaver, Zephyr," he'd said, his voice gruff but grateful. I'd felt good then, like I'd done something meaningful. But now, I remembered the way he'd avoided my eyes when I asked about the family photo Sigrid sent out after last year's Independence Day cookout, the one I wasn't in. "Sigrid wanted it simple," he'd muttered, flipping through the channels on his recliner. "You know how she gets about aesthetics." At the time, I'd let it go, chalking it up to Sigrid's obsession with appearances. But now that excuse felt hollow. It wasn't about aesthetics. It was about erasure. They'd framed that photo, sent it to everyone in the family, and I wasn't in it. Not because I wasn't there, but because they didn't want me to be. And then there was the recliner itself, the one Dad had bragged about for weeks after he got it. Top grain leather, extra lumbar support. Sigrid said I deserved some comfort for once, he'd told me, a rare smile tugging at his lips. I thought it was sweet, a rare moment of Sigrid showing care. But now it felt different. That chair wasn't a gift, it was a transaction. Keep things calm, keep your mouth shut, and you get to sit comfortably while your son is edited out of every memory. It was a bribe dressed as a gesture, and I'd been too blind to see it. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces started to fit together. Sigrid had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. When she cried, it was emotional depth. When I spoke up, it was drama. Mom had a way of smoothing over Sigrid's mistakes, turning them into stories of growth, while my efforts were met with a pat on the back and a quick change of subject. Dad stayed out of it, his silence a shield for everyone else's actions. And Elton, he knew things, saw things, but never said a word until it was too late. They'd built a system where I was the fixer, the bank, the invisible glue, and when I wasn't needed, I was disposable. I pushed the journal aside and opened my banking app again, the charge from Blue Haven Eatery still glaring at me. $1,820. I started cross-referencing other transactions, looking for patterns I'd missed. There was the vet bill for Sigrid's cat, the one she'd begged me to cover because she was between jobs, a bill she'd never repaid. There was the rent money I'd sent Elton when he'd been kicked out by his girlfriend, a desperate plea he'd made over a late-night call. "I'll pay you back, man," he'd promised, but he never did. And then there were the smaller things. Groceries I'd bought for Mom when she didn't have time before the holidays. Birthday gifts I'd sent year after year, always with a note, always without a thank you. The numbers added up, but the real cost wasn't in the dollars. It was in the way they'd made me feel, necessary but not wanted. I dug deeper, pulling up my credit report on a whim. I scrolled past the familiar entries, my car payment, my student loan from years ago, the apartment I'd lived in for the past 5 years. But then I saw something that made my stomach drop. A credit card I'd never opened, issued through a boutique rewards program with an initial balance of $3,500. Recent charges included a stay at a mountain resort in Nashville, shopping at 2 high-end outlets, and a pet grooming salon. I didn't have a pet. I didn't take weekend getaways. I didn't own anything from those outlets. But the mailing address on the account was my parents' house, and the phone number listed was Sigrid's. I recognized the last 4 digits instantly. My skin didn't go cold, my stomach didn't churn. Instead, I felt a strange calm, like someone had finally turned on the light in a room I'd always known was too quiet. Sigrid had done this. She'd used my name, my credit, my trust to live a life I'd never agreed to fund. I clicked into the transaction details, my eyes scanning the dates. The card had been opened 3 years ago, right around the time Sigrid had moved in with her ex in a nearby county. She'd come back to Mom and Dad's after the breakup, claiming she was starting over. I remembered her saying she didn't need my help with the lease because her ex had better credit. Now I knew the truth. She didn't use his credit. She used mine. I opened a new tab on my laptop and searched the address listed on the credit report. It matched the place Sigrid had lived with her ex, the same apartment I'd seen in her Instagram posts, her clinking champagne glasses and a silk robe captioned, "When your man treats you like a king." That wasn't her apartment. It was mine, at least on paper. I went back to my credit report and found another entry, a defaulted lease at that same address, with a damage fee of $2,100 marked unpaid. I hadn't rented anything outside Savannah in years, but there it was, under my name, a debt I'd never agreed to, a weight I'd never known I was carrying. I leaned back on the sofa, the city lights casting long shadows across my walls. This wasn't just about the dinner anymore. This was about years of being used, of being a vault they could dip into whenever they needed, whether it was money, credit, or silence. I thought about Mom's syrupy voice on the phone, the way she'd laughed when I asked where everyone was. I thought about Sigrid's Instagram post, her carefree smile while she spent money that wasn't hers. I thought about Dad's recliner, a reward for his complicity, and Elton's warning, a half-hearted attempt to ease his own guilt. They'd all played a part in this, each in their own way, and I'd let them. I picked up my journal again, flipping to the page where I'd written, "Not mistakes, decisions." Beneath it, I added a new line in sharp, deliberate strokes. "They never thought I'd look." I underlined it twice, the pen digging into the paper. They didn't think I'd question the missing photo, the unpaid debts, the dinner they'd held without me. They thought I'd smile and carry the weight like I always had. And I almost did, for years. But now I was looking, really looking, and what I saw wasn't a family. It was a machine. One I'd been feeding without realizing it was built to consume me. I closed the journal and stood, pacing the small space of my apartment. The city hummed outside, a distant reminder that life kept going, even when mine felt like it was unraveling. I didn't scream, I didn't throw anything, I just moved, my steps steady, my mind racing. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going back to being the son who said yes, the brother who paid, the cousin who stayed quiet. The trail was there, and I was going to follow it, even if it led me somewhere I wasn't ready to go. The words, "not mistakes." Decisions lingered in my mind as I closed my journal, the pen still warm in my hand. I'd already uncovered Sigrid's betrayal, the credit card she'd opened in my name, the defaulted lease tied to her past, but the weight of it all told me this was just the surface. The dinner at Blue Haven Eatery, the charges I'd never made, they were pieces of a larger puzzle, one my family had been assembling behind my back for years. I wasn't just excluded from a reunion, I was being erased from their story entirely, and I needed to know how deep this went. I opened my laptop, the screen casting a harsh glow across my dim Savannah apartment. My inbox was a cluttered mess, but I scrolled with purpose, looking for anything that might connect the dots. That's when I saw it. An email from months ago, buried in a folder I rarely checked, with a subject line that stopped me cold. Final copy Calverton family will. It was from Thane J. Carver, our family lawyer, and I'd been CC'd by mistake, my name tucked among a list of unfamiliar addresses. I clicked it open, my pulse quickening as I scanned the document. Page 2 laid it out in stark terms. The estate, Mom's jewelry, the savings account, all of it went to Sigrid. My name wasn't mentioned, not even for the sentimental items like Grandpa's pocket watch, which he'd always said would go to the eldest child. Then, on page 5, a clause that felt like a slap. Any party contesting this will forfeit all financial and social ties to the Calverton family. They hadn't just cut me out. They'd made sure I couldn't fight back without losing everything. The realization hit me like a wave, not crashing but sinking, heavy and suffocating. This wasn't about money. It was about rewriting the family narrative to erase me entirely. I thought back to a brunch a few months ago, a rare gathering Mom had insisted on at a diner just outside Savannah. The place had been all chrome and checkered floors, the air thick with the smell of pancakes and maple syrup. Sigrid had been the center of attention, as always, her laughter loud and performative, while Mom sipped her mimosa with a proud smile. I'd arrived late, slipping into the booth as Dee Dee Maris, my aunt, raised her glass for a toast. To Sigrid, she'd slurred, her second mimosa already kicking in. "Hope you leave something in the will for your old auntie. I helped raise you after all." Sigrid had grinned, clinking her glass. "Maybe the silver cutlery set," she'd teased. "The family heirloom." I'd smiled along, but a quiet unease had settled in my gut. Now that moment felt like a neon sign I'd been too blind to read. They'd known then, all of them, and they'd sat there eating pancakes while I paid the bill, oblivious to the fact that I'd already been written out of their future. I closed the email, my hands trembling slightly, but another memory surfaced, sharper and more insidious. A few months back, my boss had called me into a meeting, his tone unusually gentle. "Everything okay at home?" he'd asked, his brow furrowed. "Your mom called the office, said you've been struggling. Thought we should check in." I'd been mortified, stammering that I was fine, just busy, while my cheeks burned with embarrassment. I'd thought Mom was overreacting, maybe worried about me working too hard. But now I saw it for what it was, a calculated move. She'd painted me as unstable, unreliable, someone whose word couldn't be trusted. If I ever spoke up, if I ever questioned their actions, they'd already laid the groundwork to make me look like the problem. I opened my work email searching for any record of that call. There it was, a follow-up from HR. Wellness check scheduled, Zephyr Calverton, per family request. The date matched the week Sigrid had opened that credit card in my name, the same week she'd been posting photos of her Asheville getaway. They weren't just taking my money, they were taking my credibility, my sense of self. For years, I'd questioned my own memory, wondering if I'd misunderstood their slights. Had I really been invited to that cookout? Had I misheard the date of the dinner? Their dismissals had been so seamless that I'd started to doubt my own reality. But this was proof. They'd orchestrated my doubt, my erasure, all while I blamed myself for not fitting in. I stood, pacing the small space of my apartment, the hardwood floor creaking under my steps. The city lights outside flickered, a quiet reminder that life went on, even as mine felt like it was cracking open. But I couldn't stop now. I needed to know how far this went. I returned to my credit report, digging deeper into the entries I'd skimmed before. That's when I found it, a student loan from 2020 taken out in my name with a balance of $15,000. I'd never gone back to school, but Sigrid had. She'd enrolled in a graphic design program after her breakup, claiming she was reinventing herself. I called the loan servicer, my voice steady as I requested the application details. After a tense wait, they sent me a recorded call of the confirmation. Mom's voice, clear and deliberate. "Yes, I confirm. This is my account." She'd impersonated me, her tone so casual it made my skin crawl. I dug further, finding another address tied to my credit report, one I didn't recognize. It was a condo in a nearby county, the same place Sigrid had lived with her ex 3 years ago. I'd seen her Instagram posts from that time, champagne glasses clinking, her in a silk robe captioned, "When your man treats you like a king." That wasn't her condo, it was mine, at least on paper. The lease, the student loan, the credit card, they were a tapestry of betrayal, each thread woven with my name, my trust, my future. I couldn't sit still anymore. I searched online for how to report identity theft in Georgia, my fingers shaking as I typed. I found a legal support agency and dialed their number, the line crackling as it connected. A woman answered, her voice calm and professional. "This is Clara with Georgia Legal Aid. How can I help you?" I explained everything, the credit card, the lease, the student loan, the recorded call, my voice steady but tight with anger. Clara listened, her tone shifting to one of quiet encouragement. "Identity theft within families is more common than you think," she said, "but it takes courage to confront it. You need to file a formal complaint with the FTC, and I can help you start the process." I thanked her, my mind racing as I opened a new folder on my laptop, identity theft evidence. I saved the recorded call, the credit report, the email about the will, every piece of proof I could find. The anger I'd felt was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was laced with something new, determination. I wasn't just a victim of their betrayal. I was a witness to it, and I wasn't going to stay silent. I thought about Mom's syrupy laugh on the phone, Sigrid's smug grin at the brunch, Dad's silent complicity. They'd built a system where I was the giver, the fixer, the one they could use. And when I started to see through it, they'd tried to make me doubt my own mind. But I wasn't doubting anymore. I was seeing, and what I saw was a family that had never truly been mine. I closed the laptop, the screen going dark as I leaned back on the sofa. The air in the room felt heavier now, thick with the weight of what I'd uncovered. I didn't know how they'd react when I confronted them, but I knew I couldn't stop now. The web was tighter than I'd thought, and I was tangled in it. But I wasn't staying tangled. I was going to fight my way out no matter what it took. I gripped the folder of evidence as I stood outside my parents' house in Savannah, the weight of betrayal heavy in my hands. Inside were the documents I'd uncovered, Sigrid's credit card charges in my name, the defaulted lease, the student loan Mom had fraudulently confirmed, and the family will that erased me with a no-contest clause. Mom's recorded voice calmly impersonating me to secure the loan still echoed in my mind, as did the HR email about her wellness check call to my work, painting me as unstable. I'd spent years doubting myself, but now I saw the truth. My family hadn't just used me. They'd orchestrated my erasure. Today I'd make them face it. I knocked, and Mom opened the door, her smile as syrupy as ever. "Zephyr, what a surprise," she said, stepping aside. I walked into the living room where Dad sat in his recliner, bought with my stolen credit, and Sigrid scrolled on her phone, her expression bored. I set the folder on the coffee table with a thud. "This is everything," I said, my voice steady. "The credit card you opened, Sigrid, $3,500 in charges, the lease you defaulted on, the student loan you and Mom took out." I played the recording of Mom's voice. "Yes, I confirm, this is my account." "And the will, where I'm not even mentioned, with a clause to stop me from fighting it." Sigrid's eyes narrowed, her phone forgotten. "You're being dramatic," she snapped. Mom's smile faltered, her hands twisting in her lap. "You've always been too sensitive, Zephyr," she said, her tone sharp. "We did what we had to. Sigrid needed help." "Help?" I countered, my voice rising. "You stole my identity, and you—" I turned to Mom, called my work, said I was unstable, just to discredit me. I pulled out the credit report, pointing to the charges. "This isn't help. This is theft." Mom leaned forward, her voice cold. "If you push this, you'll regret it. I've already told the IRS you're hiding taxes from 2019. A fraud investigation could ruin you." I didn't flinch. "I've already filed a complaint with the FTC," I said, showing the confirmation email from Clara at Georgia Legal Aid. "Case ID 49312 FAM. They have everything. If you want to play dirty, go ahead. I've got nothing left to lose." The room went quiet, their faces a mix of shock and anger. Before they could respond, Elton walked in, his expression tense. "I got your text," he said to me, then turned to the others. He pulled out his phone, showing a screenshot of the family group chat I'd been excluded from. "Sigrid, Zephyr won't show up. He's too busy. Mom, if he does, act surprised. Dad, let's not repeat Christmas 2018. The messages confirmed their plan to exclude me, to use me, to leave me behind." Sigrid stood, her voice shrill. "You're betraying us, Elton." But Elton shook his head. "No, you betrayed Zephyr. I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry, man." I nodded, a flicker of gratitude cutting through my anger. "Thanks," I said, then turned back to Mom and Sigrid. "I'm done. You can keep the will, the lies. I don't want any of it. But I'm not your scapegoat anymore." I left the folder on the table and walked out, the door closing behind me with a finality that felt like freedom. The next morning, I got an email from my boss. Scheduled wellness check, 11 a.m. Mom's manipulation had reached my workplace again, her lies casting a shadow I couldn't escape in Savannah. I met with my boss, keeping my tone calm. "I'm fine," I said. "My family's going through issues, but I'm handling it." He nodded, but the concern in his eyes told me her narrative had taken root. I'd have to fight to uproot it. I couldn't stay here, not with their influence lurking. I texted Elton. "One last meeting. Friday, 7 p.m. After that, I'm gone." He replied, "I'll be there." I spent the next few days packing, selling what I didn't need, and finding a rental in a small Tennessee town. I didn't tell my family where I was going. They'd lost that right. As I prepared for the final meeting, I knew this was the end of the life I'd known, but maybe the beginning of one I could actually live. As I sat on my new porch in Tennessee, watching the sunset over the Smoky Mountains, I realized how far I'd come. My family's betrayal had broken me, but it also rebuilt me stronger. I learned that love shouldn't cost your identity, and sometimes walking away is the bravest choice you can make. If you're holding on to a toxic relationship out of duty, let my story remind you, you deserve better. What would you do if you had to choose between family and your own peace? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear from you. If this story touched your heart, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't like it, let me know why. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire and connect us. See you in the next one.